Welcome to part two, the late stage, where we're going to talk about care and all of those types of things. But before we even launch into this, nobody probably says it better, and you're going to hear from this gal a few times, from Stephanie, who's done the journey. So let's listen to Stephanie.
Our entire family, me, my brother, my sister, my dad, we have no regrets. We know that we did everything possible. If there was anything else we could have done for my mom, we didn't know about it, and no doctor knew to tell us about it. We did everything we could to provide my mother with comfort and peace through this very difficult disease, because that's what she did for us when she was children, raising our family, when we were children and she was raising us. That's what she did for us. So we felt we owed her that.
Wow. Stephanie, great job. No regrets whatsoever. Provided comfort and peace. And then on top of that, it was a way of giving back to her mom. And some of this changes culturally with various people groups. Some are, this is the privilege, life end privilege. Others don't have that a part of their culture. So there are all sorts of things that impact that willingness. Also the number of family members that are available and stuff, but she is quite amazing. Believe it or not, that more than half of the people that are in the late stages of the disease are cared for at home. And many times we think, oh my goodness, but that's true. Most 50% are being cared for at home, even in this late stage. So it's huge. And there are certainly other options to consider. And we're going to look at some of those as it relates to in-home care, obviously incorporating family and friends. There are options for paid care aides that can be incorporated and woven into the tapestry of the care that you're offering to your family member, for sure. Visiting nurses can be incorporated into that, because you may start to feel that you're just not competent to catch all the things that are happening to your loved one or the person that you're caring for, and you want another set of eyes that are a little deeper in knowledge than you are, although no one will probably ever know that person as well as you. And you'll notice some of those changes maybe before a professional wouldn't even notice, but it's worth having those professional eyes. And then there's the whole idea of respite care, where somebody is actually coming in and assisting and giving you an opportunity for a little bit of a break. All of those things are important, but let me tell you, the best thing you can start with is a family meeting. It's very important that the entire family is included in determining how best we're going to surround this person with the care that they need. And I've often heard people say, well, it's going to be Joy. I mean, Joy lives there in town, and I live 100 miles away. And I mean, it's like the person never even got to volunteer. It was just assumed. These types of decisions can create great stress in the family. Some people feel that they're obligated and that they didn't really have a choice. So I've been in lots of family meetings where I've had to do some straight talking, and we were able to unravel some of the complexities of that. But it's very important to have a family meeting where you're starting to iron out some of these things. And then don't be afraid to ask friends. And sometimes you go, well, they can't take care of my loved one. No, but they can repair the screen door that has been left unrepaired. Or they could maybe run to the grocery store for you if you gave them a grocery list. There are ways that they can augment off of your to-do task list that would be really easy for them to do, because they're maybe already out and about. Or maybe they can come and sit with this person for an hour or so while you go and get a haircut or get your hair done, all of those types of things. So just options. Look at all the various options. There's the continuing care retirement communities. Those are called CCRCs. Those are places where people generally move in earlier. Sometimes they start as independent, then they go to assisted living, then they go to maybe memory care, and then ultimately that memory care maybe morphs into some sort of skilled care. so that they're on that journey. We really don't have a whole lot of CCRC options here in the state of North Dakota. And some of those that do exist, like in our neighboring state of Minnesota and stuff, you have to buy into. There are all sorts of options available, but that's one thing to look at. Residential care homes. This is where in a smaller home-like setting, people can live, usually about 6 people, but I would really encourage you to do your research as it relates to a residential care home. They can be absolutely amazing, or they can be very poorly managed, and you want the best possible care for the person that you dearly love. Then there's long-term care and memory care units, and memory care units can be in assisted livings, or they can be, in some cases, within a skilled nursing. And then there's nursing care as well. All of these are various options that are available and can be explored. And in fact, the options can create its own sort of daunting feeling, going, where do I start? What do I need to do? All of those types of things. So let me give you just a couple tips. There are a couple websites, some that are actually run by the government, and you can look at them, and you could go to medicare.gov/nursing home compare. We can include that address later if you want, where it'll allow you to put in your geographic location, and you can actually search those that in your area, and you can at least get an idea of how did they do on their last inspection, what are some of the things that may have surfaced around staffing, the quality measures that are in place, how do they rate on that scale. All of those types of things are helpful. And don't be afraid to reach out to the Alzheimer's Association as it relates to some of their resources for sure. I will never put you in a nursing home. I promise I will never put you in a nursing home. Those promises are made with the best of intentions. They always are, but they may become unrealistic. They just can't be done. And it's not, I'm saying that you would move them into a nursing home and we can look at some of those other options, but you have to be realistic and say, how am I going to be able to do this? Or can I do this? Do I have family and friends that are close enough to assist me with this? What are the resources in my community? If you're in some of the rural parts of North Dakota, you don't have a whole lot of resources that are available. You don't have a day respite center or a respite spot. You don't have maybe an assisted living. Maybe the nursing home is 50 miles away. All of those types of things. So getting home health and some of those challenges, you just have to be very realistic about that promise that you may have made and your ability to fulfill it without costing you your own stress fracture. So Mary here, she's going to talk a little bit more about discussing these realities.
Caregivers will often speak about how they are committed to not placing their loved one in a facility, that their loved one had expressed to them years ago or even recently that they did not want to be placed in a facility for whatever reason, for a number of reasons. And sometimes caregivers are faced with having to place their loved one in a facility because they cannot provide the care that the person needs at home. And while a number of people are able to be cared for at home for a very long time, there are cases where the family just cannot meet the person's needs, and it would be better for the person to be in a different setting where they had the care that they need. And this is a very difficult thing for a family member to accept, especially a family member who has made a promise to their loved one that they would never do that. And on top of the grieving that they're already experiencing and the loss that they're already experiencing, it's so devastating for them to feel as though they let their loved one down by having to make this decision.
I've had multiple conversations over my life. And as I said, the first community I was in was 80% late stage people. And many times people would come and the moving in was more painful for the person who had been the care provider than for the person who was actually now going to receive our care. Kind of a synoptic conversation I've had with people is, for example, a little lady looked at me and she said, when I said till death do us part, I meant that. I just said, I know, but how old were you? And she was 18 when she got married. They had been together for years. They said, but when you stood at that altar, you had no idea. And your commitment hasn't changed. In fact, you are actually acting on that commitment today so that you can be present to him. And so there has to be talked through with people for sure. So when you're considering a move, part of that motivation is the reality that it's now taking 24/7 care for this person that's in late stage. It's no longer that I'm just preparing meals and then they go to bed and stuff, but it's that, they may be up in the night, they may be agitated, they need to be moved and repositioned. It's just very, very demanding. And you obviously want to involve others in this conversation to help you come to this decision. Family is the first place, obviously, we turn to, but sometimes family, I'll be candid, isn't all that helpful because they're many times torn themselves. It's like, but sometimes the people who are the most vociferous as it relates to, well, dad needs to stay in the home. I mean, that's been his home all of his life. It'll just tear him apart if you move him. And then usually when that gets that strong, I know that that person isn't even living nearby. It's really easy. Where do you live? St. Louis. Okay, we're moving you up here to help care for dad. Well, I can't do that. I can get away talking turkey, but the family can't do that sometimes. And so to begin the process, you want to start visiting more than one care residence so that you start to get a flavor and a feel for that. Now, most of us don't put this on our to-do list. All right. Give you a very brief story. I have a friend of mine who his wife had early onset. They had very straight conversations. They were without children, and they knew where this journey was going to lie or end. And so they actually went around together and looked at various locations. She selected the one that she wanted to move into when that day occurred. She then became a volunteer working in that memory care. And on the day that it was obvious that she needed to move in, that he no longer could provide the care and she wasn't safe being at home, that was a seamless transition. But 99.9% of the families don't look that far ahead or prepare. Part of it is that we just deny that this is ever going to evolve to that place. So when you're facilitating a move and you're talking about a move, you want to keep it brief and simple. You don't want to give a long, lengthy explanation to the person that, I'm going to have to move. It's just the increasing care needs are not able to be provided for by me. You can expect some reactions. Sometimes people get very angry, but just know that anger isn't really directed towards you. Again, it's another change. And so don't take it personally. There are people who just suck that in. Don't do that. It's not about you. Acknowledge their own feelings and say, I know that this is hard for you. It's hard for me. But I know that we both want the best possible care. I love you that much, those types of things. So you reassure the person by acknowledging their feelings as well. I know you're upset about this. I'm upset about that. Those types of things are really helpful to keep that connection. And you want to redirect any of those upsetting thoughts that could be coming towards you to a place of construction. Don't redirect them internally and going, I'm a failure. I know I should have done this. And again, you want to team up with family and friends and a professional and may seek counseling if needed to be able to help you as you facilitate moving through this process for sure. Let's listen to Elizabeth as she talks about that type of a move.
When moving to a facility, there's ways in which you can make it easier for the person with dementia. There are things you can do to prepare ahead of time, and then there's things that you can do on the day of the move. One of the things you can do is talk with the staff ahead of time and let them know about the person, what they like, what they don't like, their routine, and the things that they enjoy doing, maybe favorite foods or things like that. It's just, if there's any way in which to bring the familiar in, it's going to help, and it's going to help make a difference. Along the same lines, you may want to ask if there's a way to set up the room in advance. So to bring in a favorite bedspread, or, you know, the easy chair that they love to sit in, or pictures or photos, so that it's familiar and it's very helpful when orienting to a new environment to be able to see things that are yours and know, oh, this is my room. Other things you can do is think about on the day of, you may want to come at a time that is most convenient to the person and is not as disruptive to the daily routine. The time I tend to think about is maybe around lunch. You've had a chance to get up, have breakfast, get ready for the day, and then that may be a logical time to come. And you may be able to join in the meal at that time and still have some time before the end of the day to get to sort of know your way around. And as a family, you can stay with the person and you can ask about that and help them to understand what's there, orient to the new environment.
Elizabeth just gave you nuggets of gold, believe me, because sameness, routine, and predictability are very helpful to someone with Alzheimer's disease or a related type of dementia, for sure. And it allows that person to function within the framework of that sameness, because that's what is kind of the shelter that props them up or protects them. And so I've had also family members over the years where they go, you know, this is going to be just great for mom. And I've had two daughters, they looked at each other and said, this is going to be great. We're going to make this room so cute. She's just going to be wowed when she, and then wait. No. This is not an interior decorating challenge. Okay. Bring her old bed. The lamp that has the kind of crooked lampshade that's next to her bed, bring that. The same holds true with clothing. Bring limited amounts of clothing so that selection processes are easy, etc. We'll talk about that. But sometimes we're assuaging our own false guilt as caregivers by thinking we need to do overboard to make this work. Talk to the place that you're probably interested in. Ask them, what does a typical move day look like? Are they going to be incorporated in the congregate setting of dining? Can we as a family sit with them? Can we have a meal brought to the room at first? I mean, all of those types of things, you know your loved one better than anybody else. And if this place is worth their salt, they're going to work to make this move as disruptive, less disruptive, as undisruptive is what I want to say, as possible. So just be aware of that. So you want to set up that bedroom so it looks familiar. You want to bring those favorite comforting things that remind them of their home or where they've been living. There are obviously going to be some changes, and you will see some changes in the person because it's disruptive to them. But you are still a caregiver. You don't abdicate that caregiver role. It is just being adjusted, but you're actually getting to be more help now. Just think of it. You've got a team that's going to surround you if you're actually making this move into a community or a congregate setting. And you're going to be able to take care of yourself. As I've often told people, what we have done today is we have said yes to offering the best possible physical care to your loved one. But what we can't be is the daughter, the son, the brother, the spouse. You get to be that. And we really want you to be that. So that's where you get to adjust your role in relationship. You get to also monitor some of the care. Yes, you still monitor care. It's just not going to have to be as vigilant as what you have previously been doing. So you're going to watch for any form of a change of mood, because this could be an indication. Keep in mind that the place that has said yes to receiving your loved one doesn't know if this is an unusual mood for them. They're just seeing them for the first time. So they're not going to get that sensation of this just isn't them. Or, my word, that behavior, no way. They've never been that way before. And you may notice a significant change or even a moderate change in the mental status of the person, which is characteristic, by the way, of a move many times, because that disruption is difficult for them to process. But you're going to have to report those things to the care team that you are a part of, so that they can start to find what is the new normal for this person, for sure. So you need to look at some of the other plans that need to be made at an early stage. Gotta love my phone in the background, right? There, just put that on silence. Sorry about that. Silence those phones. But powers of attorney, looking at the person's capacity, you want to make those plans early so that they can be in place. It's harder to put those in place later when the person's competency isn't there. They may be deemed to be incapacitated and unable to act on their own behalf, so they could not actually sign a legal document. And at that point, you're going to have to take some steps that may require a court intervention, that requires a physician's validation as to the capacity of that person and the steps that need to be taken, for sure. And this is where a guardianship comes in. Not going to talk a lot about it. Obviously, I'm at Guardian and Protective Services here in Bismarck. We have guardianships that have been established by people who have no close relatives or children, and they want to know that their choices or wishes are going to be honored. So that's one form. Some people think that a guardian is only for people who are extremely wealthy, and we've had people who have had guardianships that literally had millions of dollars in assets, but they couldn't get their family to step around them and surround them amicably because of tensions. So they established the guardianship so that there could be some neutral parties that were able to navigate all of their wishes and desires. But just keep in mind, it's going to require a physician statement and a court hearing. And the court is very reticent to try or to act to take the rights of an individual away. They will rather do less than more. And because our rights are very important to us, and it's part of what we use to define ourselves as a person as well. There are mixed feelings as it relates to efforts at extensions of life, or methods that push out death and stave death. And the reason are that many of these particular efforts are not necessarily all that effective. And it can actually add suffering. So you want to talk to some professionals about this that are involved either in palliative care, and we'll be talking about hospice here in a moment. So it's a conversation you want to have, and you don't want to just reach a snap decision. I mean, for example, if it becomes very, very difficult for a person to swallow, and then they say, well, tube feeding should be your next step, you may want to reconsider that. Is this just a part of the body's natural process of shutting down? And how are we really going to improve or sustain the quality of life for a person with some of these other things that we could add? So you want to clearly, with eyes wide open, evaluate every effort at the extension of life, and that even includes some medications as well. So when I talked about tube feeding, sometimes suggested, but long-term tube feeding has really no apparent advantages that we've been able to look at. In fact, it has a number of disadvantages. And the best thing is to assist with oral feeding and maybe use thickened liquids and things like that as a preferred method of intervention. So being very, very careful about looking at some of those things. I am not going to go in depth about hospice because you have another presenter that's going to talk about hospice. But let me tell you, having been in the community, like I said, when I first started, that actually won 2 hospice awards. One of them was actually a national hospice recognition. Hospice is amazing. What it does, I've actually seen people that when they moved them in or onto hospice, that for a period of time, they improved. Part of that is because of the adjustments in medication and all of those types of things, which a hospice provider can go more into detail with you about. But it is absolutely amazing. Both of my parents passed away utilizing hospice, and my own personal experience with my dad, who passed away. I had been this director in the Twin Cities, and I had no idea that one of my wonderful caregivers had gone to work. I knew she had left me. I was disappointed, but she had gone to work for the place that my dad went to. My mother was no longer able to care for my dad, even though he was on hospice because of her own physical realities. And I live here in North Dakota, and my brother lives a distance as well. So he went into, they were in a CCRC, he went into the skilled care side, which had a few beds designated for hospice. And when I heard that he was really approaching the end of his life, I jumped in the car, I raced to the Twin Cities, didn't get there till 12:30, knew I wasn't going to get there in time, was actually going to stay on site in one of their guest suites. And when I came through the door, I was met by Carolyn. It's emotional for me. And I looked at her and I said, Carolyn, oh my word, I didn't know you worked here. And she looked at me and grabbed my hand and said, I'm so sorry for your loss. And I want you to know I sat next to your dad. And I asked him, would it be okay if I hold your hand? And he said, I would like that. And I held his hand, and he breathed for about another minute, and he was gone, and he went peacefully. This is what hospice does, and they do it so well, so well. So it's a gift to be able to give that to the people that we love, and so they can talk more about that. But here are a few myths. Bringing in hospice means giving up on the person. It really doesn't. It just means adjusting the comfort level for that person. There are things that hospice is able to provide as it relates to comfort that you can't on standard care, okay? Hospice will leave the person in a care for drugged and unable to function. Actually, nothing could be further from the truth. Many times they're very aware, but they're just more comfortable. This isn't about over sedating people. This is about keeping them comfortable as much as possible. So amazing things. It's going to focus on the quality of life, provides comfort. The hospice team surrounded my brother and I. They were very present. We got cards from them. We were invited to a support group to process our grief at an anniversary date gathering they had for others. I mean, it extends well beyond the day that your loved one passes away, and it's covered by Medicare. I tell people it's quite simple. You have a Medicare card on one side. If you face it this direction, it provides for your medical treatment. You tip that card over, and on the back side, it says hospice, and it will cover hospice services. Let's listen to Stephanie again.
Toward the end, my mother did go into hospice. I must say, I fought my mother's doctor relentlessly. I did not want my mother to go into hospice. I think because psychologically I knew what that really meant. But it was time. It was time. And of course, there's a shift there. We no longer saw the primary care physician. We saw the hospice nurse who came out 3 times a week, and she was on call. So if a regular visit was not scheduled, but I felt she needed to be there, I could call and schedule a visit. I remember her to this day. Her name was Dorothy. And then, of course, the hospice doctor was now responsible for my mother's care. And they were there until the end. They were there until the end.
I would certainly encourage you to consider hospice services and palliative care. And your experience may be a little different than Stephanie's. Sometimes you're able to keep your primary physician. It kind of varies from state to state or provider to provider. But ultimately, all hospice services are focused on creating comfortable life, end of life experiences, not only for the person who we are focused on, but also for those that are surrounding that individual. We know that the end of life is going to bring a mixture of feelings, and you will feel some of these simultaneously, and you can expect a mix of feelings. Exhaustion, many times some relief, while at the same time you feel guilt. But what you're trying to do is honor that person's spirit. You want to go, this is who they are, and this is what they're about. And right now, it's not about me at this moment. It's about what is best for them. And you want to call on others for help. People who know this person, other maybe even work associates who have been in relationship with this person, who can kind of companion you and this person. We'll go back. We want to respect all the end of life decisions and their wishes. And we want to ensure that those advanced directives are in place for sure. And we want to maintain that comfort and connection as much as possible with that person. So you don't step away, you actually get to move in closer. You just don't have to focus on some of the other things that could serve as a distraction as you are focused more on care. Let's listen to Melanie again.
To provide an optimal end-of-life experience for someone with Alzheimer's disease, I think it's important to have conversations about what the person would want when they're still in the early stages of the disease. If we can sit down with the person and ask them, what would you want? Who would you want around you? What experiences would be important to you? And get that information then, that's absolutely optimal. And there are some terrific resources out there to help you to do that. One of them is called the 5 Wishes, and is available through most hospice agencies. But in the absence of that, if you've never had those conversations, I think the key to a good end-of-life experience is to think about what your family member always appreciated, always loved during their lives. And if they loved being around family and friends, gather family and friends around. Don't let them be alone during that time. On the other hand, if they're a person that was very much a loner and preferred to be alone, then what can you do to give them that time and that space? End of life is very, very personal and very individual, and so there is no one-size-fits-all answer to that. The best thing to do is just to think about that person and honor who that person has always been.
Absolutely. And I would encourage you, if you haven't got a copy of the 5 Wishes or something similar to that, to reach out and get a copy so that you can start to think through some of those things, because we know where this journey is going. And we know that none of us get out of here alive, but it will be a distinct knowing with this type of person as it relates to their end of life experience. So, and we also need to be aware that sometimes people are mistaken that a person seems to get sick and they think they need to rush them to the hospital. That is not what hospice does. It's all about comfort care for sure. So when a person does move into that loss, feelings of grief are normal, and you can start to anticipate that you're going to make some adjustments. But even though you may have been grieving now for years, you're going to go into another phase of that grief. And so you are probably familiar with what some of those grief symptoms are, but none of us seem to get to just jump over those. I would strongly encourage you to reach out to the Alzheimer's Association, an invaluable source of information, 24/7. And I always want to make sure you understand, in North Dakota, we have access to the Alzheimer's Association at a level that is not experienced by other states. Years ago, the state of North Dakota, rather than inventing their own kind of government Alzheimer's Association, said, you know what? The Alzheimer's Association does it better than anybody. Why don't we work collaboratively with them and help resource them so that every person in the state of North Dakota can access their amazing resources and, you know, that personal family consult and all those things, of which Nikki is a part of. The best decision North Dakota has ever done. I just kudos to that legislature that said yes to that. And so I'm a champion of the Alzheimer's Association in that decision.